9 reasons why Rolex watches are so hard to find. Hi, welcome. ExceptionalTiming.com is here to help you choose the perfect watch for you. Rolex watches are the epitome of luxury, and they are designed by many different people. However, many people have trouble purchasing one because sometimes there aren't any available. This is partially because there is a wait list of up to 5 years long for one of these coveted watches, although the wait list varies depending on the specific watch models. If you are lucky, the wait list is only 6 months long. But why are Rolex watches so hard to find in the first place? We've got 9 good reasons for you. 1. Amazing reputation. Rolex has an amazing reputation. Rolexes last for years and almost never break, especially if you have them regularly serviced and cleaned. Because of this amazing reputation, many people want to purchase one of these watches. Rolex as a brand is highly recognizable, and the name is associated with craftsmanship, luxury, and success. Because of the things associated with the Rolex name, people want to purchase their watches, and there is a high demand for these luxury products. 2. High demand. Rolex watches are in high demand, and because of this, it is very difficult to find and purchase one of these luxury watches. Rolex as a company has many credentials and a high pedigree, and people want to purchase high-quality products that are associated with those credentials. These credentials create demand, and because Rolex has a sterling reputation, they sometimes can't keep up with the huge number of customers. Rolex products are also considered to be an investment because they can sometimes increase in value over time, and they usually last for a lifetime and beyond. Because many people enjoy investing and want to purchase a Rolex watch so they can wear it for formal and professional events, the demand for these watches is high, and Rolex has trouble keeping up with that demand. As more people are founding companies and becoming rich, more people are trying to purchase a Rolex watch as a symbol of wealth and success. So, as time goes on, the demand for these watches has increased, while the time it takes to make these high-quality watches has not gone down. People all over the world want to purchase a Rolex watch, and Rolex has been unable to keep up with the increase in demand. Although it is difficult to purchase a Rolex watch, the demand for Rolex watches is still high because scarcity drives up prices even more. If an item is rare, then it becomes more desirable. Although the number of Rolex watches for sale at a time is limited, the watches are still desirable and people still want these luxury watches because they're handmade and crafted from quality materials. 3. Rolexes are handmade. All Rolex watches are handmade by trained watchmakers, and it takes time to make delicate things by hand. The machinery that makes Rolex watches work so well takes time to put together and be manufactured, and most of Rolex's watch parts are made inside the same building that the watchmakers work in. Rolex only hires a limited number of watchmakers, although the exact number of Rolex watchmakers is unknown. Since Rolex watches are only made by hand, although the process is helped along by machines to ensure that pins are installed correctly, it takes time to make even a single Rolex watch. The machines can't be sped up, and Rolex relies on people instead of programming. People are also only supposed to work for up to 40 hours a week, and sometimes they take a vacation or get sick. Because of this, Rolex can't keep up with the demand for the watches, so it can be hard to find them in stores. Things take time to make when they're made by hand rather than machine, and Rolex watches are no exception to that rule. Because it takes time to make Rolex watches, only a certain number of watches can be made by a single watchmaker in a week. The amount of time that it takes to finish making a Rolex watch varies on the watch and watchmaker, but it can take about 40 hours to make one watch. This means that some watchmakers at Rolex can only make one watch a week, which means that there is inevitably going to be a limited supply of completed Rolex watches that are available for purchase. Rolex watchmakers need to have steady hands and be able to sit for long periods of time in order to be hired at Rolex. And it's sometimes hard to find people who have the necessary qualifications to meet the high standards of this company. Rolex watches are complex and take time to make. To maintain their reputation and product quality, Rolex doesn't want to reduce the quality of their watches by switching from making handmade watches to machine-made watches. This is a quality that many people appreciate, even if it means they have to wait to get a new watch. The watchmakers that work at Rolex also have to be trained before and after they are hired to ensure that all Rolex watches will be made correctly. 4. Required watchmaker training. Watchmakers who work at Rolex go through extensive training before and after they're hired. Although Rolex has a number of training facilities for the people they hire, they only hire the best of the best watchmakers who apply. It takes time for watchmakers to become qualified enough to work at Rolex. Watchmaking school takes 2 to 4 years to complete, and then they have to go through more training and get experience in order to become an official Rolex watchmaker. Rolex watchmakers are highly trained and need to master a variety of techniques, both new and old, that Rolex requires them to use when making their watches. This can sometimes slow down the hiring process, and in turn, this increases the amount of time that it takes for a Rolex watchmaker to become fully qualified. This lengthy process reduces the number of Rolex watches that can be made. This is another reason why it is hard to purchase a Rolex watch. Rolex watchmakers are recruited, and only a few watchmakers are accepted into the Rolex internship program, where the craftsmen are trained. Right now, about 170 people are currently in the Rolex internship program, and only a small number of those interns will be hired at Rolex to make watches. Although it does take time to become qualified enough to make Rolex watches, there are a limited number of Rolex watchmakers. The resulting watches are made of quality materials and are worth the price that people pay. 5. High quality. Rolex watches are known for being high quality watches that last a lifetime, but these high quality watches are considered to be the best because of more than just how long they last. They are partially known as high quality watches because of the materials that these luxury watches are made out of. Rolex watches are made out of high quality materials that are oftentimes made in the same building where these watches are assembled. They're crafted in the same building, so the quality of the materials can be assured. And so the gears and pins don't get broken, bent, or lost during the shipping process. It takes time for these materials to be made, checked, and then given to the watchmakers. This makes it hard to find Rolex watches in a timely manner because this attention to detail slows down the entire process. However, it is necessary for the gears and pins to be checked for quality to make sure there are no imperfections. The price is high, so the quality has to match. Sometimes, the supply of metal that Rolex uses to make their watches is limited, but they don't want to use different metals because they want to maintain the quality standards of their watches. If the company were to change the metals that their watches are made out of, they couldn't necessarily guarantee the quality of the materials. 6. Multiple quality checks required. At Rolex, they have a reputation to uphold and don't want to risk losing that reputation because of a few watches that broke after a few years. Because they rightfully want to maintain their reputation, all completed watches must go through a thorough quality check process before they are sent to various authorized Rolex watch sellers and retailers. Rolex watches go through at least 3 quality checks, and they are kept in one of the manufacturing buildings for at least a few days to ensure they don't break and are working properly. Rolex wants to ensure that all problems with their watches are caught before they are sent to customers or retailers, so they put their watches through rigorous quality checks. Although these quality checks are important, especially because no one likes receiving a broken watch, it slows down the delivery process and makes it take longer for retailers to receive watches, and it makes it hard to find Rolex watches. But if something is as valuable as this, it's worth the wait. Social media. The rise of social media has also led to a rise of popularity for Rolex. Although they are not directly related, social media is still one of the reasons why so many people want to purchase a Rolex watch. Celebrities frequently post pictures of themselves surrounded by their expensive clothing and various accessories, and Rolex watches are no exception. When a celebrity posts a picture and they have a Rolex on their wrist, some of their fans will want to purchase that watch and have what they have. This has increased the demand for Rolexes, and it sometimes makes them harder to find. 8. Limited number of facilities. Rolex watches are only made in a number of facilities, and that number is very small. In fact, there are only 4 factories from which Rolex makes their watches and runs their business. In some of these factories, they don't even make the watches. Instead, the factory is where the company is managed and new watches are developed and tested. All Rolex watches are made in Switzerland, so it takes a while for them to be shipped to other countries where customers can purchase them. Because they're made in another country, away from most people who want to purchase Rolex watches, the number of watches that are sent to other countries is limited because of how much it costs to get them through customs and ship them to other countries. Even though Rolex watches will be sold to a variety of people and are likely to sell out quickly, retailers and sellers can't purchase a large amount of Rolex watches at one time, which makes them hard to find as there aren't many available at any given time. 9. Limited number of sellers. There are a limited number of people that are even allowed to sell Rolex watches. There are some Rolex retailers that are directly associated with Rolex, but others basically have to get permission to sell them, especially independent sellers. Since there are a limited amount of authorized sellers, there is a limited amount of stock, which makes it hard to find and purchase a Rolex. Most people who purchase Rolex watches know someone who sells them, and they let their sources know when they're looking for a Rolex to purchase. Unfortunately, it is sometimes difficult to find Rolex watches at watch stores, but luckily you can purchase Rolex watches online through certain websites. Unfortunately, when you buy a Rolex online, you can't see it in person, so you may not want to go down that route. However, if you really want to purchase a Rolex and can't seem to find any in your area, then you should look online and see if you can find one that you like. Although it can sometimes be difficult to find a Rolex, they are quality made watches and are definitely worth the money once you find one that you love. There are many places where you can look and possibly find a Rolex watch that appeals to you. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and explore further articles at exceptionaltiming.com.